Thanks for tuning in to the Urban Scope podcast. I'm back with more wrestling news, surprisingly. I don't do these too often, maybe a couple times a year, but I felt like I had to, especially with the recent passing of Ted Turner. Rest in peace to Ted Turner, who was very important, uh, or had a very important contribution in my life as a kid, especially with his involvement or ownership of the World Championship Wrestling, also known as WCW. Now, if you don't know about the WCW, you're probably younger and you probably only heard of it because the WWE, I want to say, bought the WCW's rights in 2020, 2001. Once the, you know, WCW kind of folded and went away. But the WCW rivaled the WWF back in the day, which is the WWE now, of course. Um, and I didn't watch the WWF as much because of the great storylines and the great personalities and characters that WCW produced. These characters like Sting, Macho Man, Goldberg, the Steiner brothers, Rey Mysterio, even our smaller wrestlers like the Raven, Conan, all these different great wrestlers I think about when I think about the WCW made up a huge part of my childhood. And Ted Turner had a lot to do with that because he created this ginormous or enormous platform for these wrestlers to be on. You know, wrestlers like Hulk Hogan and Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. And I'll talk about the NWO and what great things they did. I think they started this whole wrestling type gang type thing because you had wrestlers in the WWF like a D-Generation X, who were kinda like a mini NWO. I think the NWO was a lot better just because of the storylines and because of the fighters that they had. But I think, speaking of that, NWO, I don't NWO was good, but then when they started doing NWO Red, NWO Green, they just got out of hand with it, and it started to get stale. But when NWO initially was around, and they only rivaled like the Giant and Sting and others like that, it became a good versus bad, and they created that television that was necessary for television. And I think it set the platform for a lot of things because now you have to have a bad guy and you have to have a good guy. It's that superhero mentality, and Ted Turner created that narrative or helped create that narrative of television that was great television, not just for sports, but for television in itself. So you have to give him kudos for that because there was a lot of great Monday nights where I watched the NWO against WCW. I had the video game on Nintendo 64, which it was always about NWO versus everybody else versus the field. And the field had a lot of great talent, but they had to gang up together to get to NWO because you had to go against a Macho Man, Hollywood Hulk Hogan, even a Eric Bischoff and a guy like Vincent. And they had um, the Outsiders, which is Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. So they had a lot of evil pieces that people wanted to see go down, especially when Sting came in the ring with one bat flying down from the rafters and clearing the ring out by himself. We knew, well, I didn't know it was fake back then, but looking back at it now, it's impressive for what was able to happen. But as a kid, you always felt a sense of accomplishment when you saw Sting be able to do that, and you thought you could do that in real life, but it wouldn't work in real life. So, um, but the pay per views that they've had that Ted Turner helped create, especially one of my favorite moments is Hulk Hogan against Sting at Starcade. I want to say it was 1995 or 96, but that was one of the most legendary moments. And actually, it was 99, I believe. One of the most legendary moments in WCW and wrestling history because when Sting beat Hulk Hogan, it was a changing of the guards, even though I think he lost the belt to Hulk Hogan the next night. But for that night, it felt amazing. You finally heard Sting talk. You saw the WCW wrestlers crowd the ring and celebrate. So it was a huge moment. And to see fights or wrestling pay per view events like Road Rage, where all of the bikers are in, I believe it's North Dakota, on their bicycles, and you hear people revving up their engines while people are wrestling. It was one of the most legendary moments of all time. Or even things like Halloween Havoc. So they had a lot of great matches and a lot of great times, and I don't think we'll be able to see that again. But they had me watching VHS tapes on rerun all summer in my, breaks from school. And I was watching those, probably from around 10 to about 14 or 15. I was watching a lot of wrestling back then. But when WCW left, I stopped watching because the WWF just didn't, they had a lot of great characters like Stone Cold and Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker and Kane. I did like these wrestlers, but I watched for a couple of years. Then the storyline started to get a lot, started to get stale, started to get very redundant. So, but I think Ted Turner did a great job of creating WCW, of rivaling uh, Vince McMahon's WWF at the time, which is good for competition in a free enterprise system that if you don't create competition, then you won't create a great product in this market. Because look at some of the government entities or look at some of the utility companies that give you poor service because they don't have any competition. You have nowhere else to go. So we can treat you anyway because we know that you need us. But in a market, especially in entertainment, you need rivals because if you have those rivals, you can create the best product because everybody's trying to outdo each other. And in return, us, the fans or the viewer, get a great product and we get great storylines, we get great headlines, we get great characters, we get great performances and the best out of these players or entertainers that we're looking forward to. And I think they've done a great job of that. So, but Ted Turner definitely spearheaded this movement, this WCW movement. And um, I think without the WCW, the WWE today is not as relevant or as popular as it is today because I think that start came from Ted Turner and his actions and his visionary skills or vision to see better wrestling and to see better TV. And those Monday nights he created were legendary, and also the Sunday or Saturday nights as well when those pay per views aired. He definitely created more competition because without him, without Ted Turner creating WCW, I think the WWF could have gave us anything because it's the only game in town. They had ECW, but it wasn't popularized as much, and it was more violent. Now WWE and WCW was more friendly, so I do think Ted Turner had huge contributions. So rest in peace to him for the contributions that he had in my childhood growing up. And until then, well, until next time, I'll see you next time.